we traveled far as clans, and it was us running into the next clan, man, that was living there already, man. And they just said, man, you guys, what's going on? You don't have one of these? But trade changed. Somebody one day said, no, trade is this rock. You can give me 5 of those big old logs and you can give me 3 of those cows. And they're going, get out of here. Take the rock. How does this happen? Racing for resources, racing for power, and we have abandoned being mankind. Now we know the only time we change when we are at the precipice of our survival.
Sharp French, what up? This one's luck, I let the pain inspire me. I put my all in everything I'm doing. Up until it's done, I'm me for the entirety. I put in overtime, I be working. Just know I'ma go for mine, cause I earned it. They watching, I know it's time. I confirmed it. A whole society determined success.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. I'm your host, Sean French, and today I have with me a legend, a comedic legend, an amazing individual who's had an amazing career, someone that I've been following and watching ever since I was a young boy. In fact, I used to sneak out of my room on Sunday evenings because his show was on after my bedtime. You may have heard of it, In Living Color, absolutely epic show, was raised on it, hysterically funny. This man is still going. In fact, BET just greenlit Varnell, a spinoff of Martin, starring our own author of Living in Color, Tommy Davidson. What's up, baby?
You got it. You got it all right. You got it all right,
dude. I mean, it's like, it's kind of like it's my job, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. I look for that. I look for that.
But no, man, I'm so excited.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm excited, man. It's, like I told you off air, I've, and I just told the whole audience of the world that I've, been a fan of you for a lot of years. And so, when Val talked to me about you, I was like, oh, this is a no-brainer. I love it. And you've had such a great career, man. And, from what I can already tell and from what I've heard, you're an amazing person too.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a life's work. It's been a life's work.
Yeah, man, for sure, dude. Yeah, for sure. So you have an interesting story, right? And you've been pretty public about it, right? Your childhood. If you don't mind, can you give the audience that may be a lot younger that didn't get to watch all those years of amazing things of you, just a peek behind the curtain of who you are and how you've become where you're at right now?
I didn't know my life was any different than anybody else's, until I was 5. When I turned 5, I found out that I was Black and my family was white. But I never looked at people as Black and white. So that was my brother, my sister, my grandmother, my uncle. That was my family. You know what I mean? And I found out years and years and years later that I had been abandoned in a trash in Greenville, Mississippi in 1966. And my mom and my then dad were students at Colorado. I think it was the Deion Sanders, Colorado. And she found me random. They were there. They heard Kennedy's speech. John F. Kennedy had a speech during all the racial unrest in our country that was just crazy back then. It was totally different. We were hated, despised, killed, all kind of stuff, Everybody was, by the way, who got here to the U.S. anyway. So they go down there to work on a project. They end up coming through there a year later or something. And we're looking for a young lady that worked with them on immunizing children and doing voting drives in Greenville, Mississippi. So they said she's gone. She left. She took her kids. But I think she left her baby at this house over here. And so my mom went over there being nosy, walked in the house. There's people in there doing drugs and, drinking. And so she got out of there fast. And she said, something told me to look under this tire that was on a pile of trash. And I saw your foot. And so then I pulled the stuff away and you were there laying unconscious. You had a red shirt on that said, I will be president in, and then the rest was ripped. you know, and was in a coma, was starved, had been physically abused, had contusions in my head and stuff. And I lived. I lived. And they took me back to Fort Collins, Colorado, where I grew up and where grew up until I was 4 or 5, you know, which is, you know, I'm basically a Midwest white boy, I guess. You know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah, man.
horses and, rivers and just meadows and farms and, you know, and we moved to Washington, D.C. when they broke up. And that is when I found out I was black, white, because we came into Washington, D.C. During the riots. Me and my sister didn't know that 'cause we were 5. So it was just like smoke everywhere. And my mom told us to lay on the floor. And, it was just army men. I said, there's army men, And when that cooled down, I was in Washington, D.C., where I grew up. I ended up growing up in Maryland, but that was my first impression was D.C., where we moved. And they asked, my mom makes friends with anybody. So they said, the kids are playing over at the pool. I said, why don't you have them go to the pool? So we were so excited, man, to go to the pool. And we got to the pool and, man, the black kids kicked our ass so bad, man, all the way home. And
really,
every time they saw us, man, they would beat our ass, boy. And they were saying white cracker to my brother and my sister. And I don't see where anybody would beat them up. They were so nice. They wouldn't do anything to anybody. My brother was like, if I was 5, 6, 7, he was like 8. My sister, we're like twins, but you can't tell because she's blonde. So, so I went to my mom. Oh, and they were calling me white cracker lover.
White cracker lover.
Right. So I went back to my mom and I said, why are they calling me a white cracker lover? Because I like graham crackers. You see?
Come on,
and
man.
I was like, I don't even like white crackers. They're dry. You can't swallow them. You got to have like tuna or something on them that you don't even like. A graham
Some
cracker.
soup.
Man. Yeah, man. Some soup with it. A graham cracker and some apple juice. You're at
Dude, graham crackers are giving, bro. They're good.
Man. Yeah, man.
Them cinnamon ones?
Yeah, man. Put a little peanut butter on them too, boy. You got
Ooh.
it. Yeah.
Come on.
Got it. So, especially in the s'mores too. Okay, so anyway, and that's when this explained to me. That's what people, your color, call people my color when they don't like them. I was like,
wow.
Well, what color? I was like, what color are y'all? And she said, well, we're white. I was like, no, you're beige.
You're beige.
I know the colors from crayons. Yeah. I never understood why I saw one crayon that said flesh, Like, what is this? This is kind of pink, but it ain't, But anyway, I was a little even saying that. So we moved from there because it was a bad neighborhood, really, actually. And we moved to the suburbs. That's the first time I heard the word nigger because grown men were chasing me. Like, kill that nigga. Like, teenagers would be in a truck and just jump out. And I, like, barely got in the house. They'd run past my sister, man, and that was scary. So I asked my mom, like, who are these niggas? Because we got to stay away from them. They must be some pretty bad people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's when she said, well, that's what your color call people are. That's what people our color call people your color when they don't like them. I tell this story like it's the first time every time, man, I'm telling you. Because it still confused me what the color, who said what, And I said, well, what color am I? And she said, well, you're black. And I said, no, I'm not black. I'm brown. She said, but that's what people call you when they don't like you.
Wow.
And it split my whole brain at 5 because I was just like, this is the stupidest thing ever. How am I, well, where am I? What, it's an atom bomb up here and here, but mainly because I thought that we were like animals. because I grew up with animals, man, especially litters. You know, we couldn't wait till the horse had a colt or the dog would have puppies because we have like 10 little things to play with, man. You know, and they were the cat could be a brown cat and have two white ones, a black one, a speckled gray one. You know,
Mm.
a speckled brown, gray, and white one. You know, whatever. You know,
Yeah, sure,
horse
of course.
brown horse and have a black colt, man. You know, so I thought we were like that.
Mm.
You know what I
That
mean?
makes sense. That's interesting, man.
Yeah,
Let me stop you real quick because that's perspective, right? It's like the
yeah,
innocence of a 5-year-old, right, or an 8-year-old, however you were at that time. You just thought like, okay, cool. It's like a horse. Like
right,
my parents got together, they had me,
right.
and I came out
I'm a
brown.
brown one.
I'm a brown one. I'm a brown horse.
Right,
Like right.
right, right. You see, so that was like crazy because people were seeing a color that wasn't there, really.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So I'm like, this is stupid too. You know,
Wow.
so that was, just started the spark in me. You
Hmm.
know, because I don't think I really ever changed as a kid. You know,
Hmm.
the only thing that really changed me was the black fact, you know, because, there was certain realities that came with that as I got older, where I was like, well, wait a second, you know, why is this?
Hmm.
Why don't they like us? You know? And then started looking into that. I think I looked into that way earlier than most kids should. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
but I started reading a lot, and I had James Brown, "I'm Black and I'm Proud." That was the song that was out, so I loved music. You know,
Hmm.
and but I mean, we went to folk festivals, and I'm like a little hippie too. Went to folk festivals and square dances. I mean, I got it all, man. You know what I mean? I got it
Yeah.
all. Yeah. So it all just kind of, I guess, it all just stuck to me. But the main thing that was really cool about me was, I was loved a lot
Yeah.
in my house, in my family. Like, I was special to them. I was kind of like spoiled in a way, you know, because my grandfather, anytime we had big get-togethers or whatever, my grandfather would say he doesn't have to do any work. He's going to hang out with me and watch football. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Hey, go do that over here. I'm going to hang out with grandpa.
yeah, yeah,
You go
yeah.
work. You go work.
Why does he have to? Why does he come and clean up the thing? It's like, nah, man, we watching the game. Yeah, and he was, take me fishing and just really,
That's awesome, man.
gave me my first camera. When I wanted to be a photographer and shit.
Dang.
And he was my guy, boy. He would make me learn the names on the jerseys and match them with where the person was, the country they were from. You know,
Walk
so
me through that. How did
yeah,
you distinguish? I mean, that's some critical thinking right
yeah,
there.
yeah,
So
yeah,
walk
yeah,
me through
yeah.
that.
It's just was on the spelling and stuff, and
Yeah.
just anytime you see like Polanski or whatever, he's probably Polish, you
Yeah.
know, if he's
Yeah.
here in America, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe Russian, or Brown, he's American, you
Yep.
know,
Yep.
he's American, uh, Burdor, who's something with the X or something, something. He said, "This is weird. If it's spelled really weird, he's French." You know, it was like, that was my thing. He
Yeah.
played
Yeah.
Cowboys and Indians, and he'd get down on the ground and he'd go, "All right, man, you're the Indians, man. The Indians are the heroes, so you guys better come out on top, man." You
Yeah,
know what I
that's
mean?
right.
And he was
That's
a cowboy,
right.
you know,
Okay.
from Wyoming.
Wyoming.
Yeah, yeah.
Good old middle
So
America right there, man.
yeah, but I got it all. Got it all. He was a he went to Bolivia when my mom was like 8 or something, and worked at a coal mine until she was like, I think, 13 or something. So she knows fluent Spanish, you know. Plus, they were close to the Chicanos in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this other thing coming in,
So
so
eclectic, man.
yeah, man.
Like
So
your experience is
wherever we lived, whoever couldn't speak English, she was the one that they came to. And
that's
it didn't matter
cool.
if you were Guatemalan, you know, Mexican or whatever, or Puerto Rican, whatever. Y tu mami is home. Yeah, come on. You know, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It's interesting because like I'm hearing all this stuff, like all your experience, right? And it I don't know everything yet, but
Mhm.
and it would take years to know that, right? But I could seriously tell just like these experiences have molded you into the intelligent and hysterical individual you are, right? Like,
Yeah, it has.
I
Most
mean,
certainly.
heck, man. And then, you are in living color, in the 90s. That had to have been an experience too, right? Because you're a young man that didn't know he was black until he was 5. Now you're in a show in your 20s called In Living Color, and then you wrote a book,
I
Living
know.
in Color.
I know. I know. You know.
Man.
Yeah. You start to outside of our, primitive selves, like all the, other animals that are here or whatever. When you start to think of, the miracle of it all, then it all is. That's one to come from that and then have a book named that, but the title's true, and the title's true both ways because the title was true for the show. Like, come in a place where we're living in color, you know, where we're not seeing all that. It's about instant happiness, laughter, observations that feel good, stuff that makes you go, man, wow, whoa, ah, let me get to school. What the hell? And then everybody's talking about it. We get on the radio and everybody's like this and that and that. And it's all types of radio. It's not just urban radio and, you know, you know, rock and roll is every station, across the board, every kid, and I credit that to how a lot of us grew up on the show because we were privy to grow up in the 70s, and the late 60s, where you know where liking someone else's culture was actually hip. It actually was cool,
Mm.
and everything
It's
was
just it's
yeah.
you look at that cast, right? And
Mhm.
it's like well, the show is epic and legendary, right? And I think that if I were to put that show on in my house, my kids would binge the heck out of it. They wouldn't want
Oh
to
heck
stop
yeah!
watching it. Because to me it transcends all generations, right?
Mhm,
Given the
mhm.
opportunity, put it in front of somebody, someone's gonna watch it and be like, I'm never watching anything else. If I want to laugh, I'm gonna watch this. This is genius. But you look at the cast, it's like most of everybody who's somebody came from that cast. Jim Carrey, right? Jamie Foxx,
Mhm.
J Lo was one of the flight. Huh?
Jennifer, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was incredible. It was just absolutely incredible. How did working with all those people shape you the rest of your career?
What it did for me was, you know, every other actor on TV or movies or anything, every other performer knows like karate, but I know kung fu.
Mm,
You know,
really?
yeah, it's like the advanced form of performing where you can morph and you got the ability to shape change. You have the ability to empty out.
Mm-hmm.
When I say empty out, the other person is doing some things where you're supporting them by absorbing what they're doing. You know, you actually can be funny as the guy that's not funny in the thing. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And so when I say to Jim, uh, you know, are you all right? Yes, I am now all right. I can fire
The fi-
myself. Yeah, but it's me going, but what likes that is me going, are 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 you all right? You know, because it says, what the hell? And that's what we do.
yeah.
We see something, we go, oh my God, what, we're not the same. Whatever we saw is extreme, but it
Mm-hmm.
was nothing to him.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Fire myself. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit of everything at
Yeah.
once, which is what you want. You know what I mean? It's what you want.
Genius. Yeah. Yeah.
It's what you
For
want.
sure.
It's like a life balance. You know, we only get in life balance when we're in a situation where we all can be killed quick. You
Mm.
never see anybody being mean on the plane unless something's wrong with
Right.
them. You know what I mean? Because
Mm-hmm.
everybody's going, hey, yeah, this is cool and everything, but you know, we're going to need each other really bad, I think, you know, at a point, if you know what I mean. So it's like, you know, it's like one of those
Mm.
things that I noticed when I was a kid, and it was, I made observations, man, about stuff that I don't think other people were thinking about. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because of being on both sides, you know, and I never really felt like the white people that called me that really hated me, really.
No. Right. 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 Okay.
You know, I knew that they were taught to.
Learned
Yeah, because
learned
my friend,
behavior, man.
because of my friends. All of my friends when I was a kid were from somewhere else, and we had a backyard where we lived, and we all played and stuff. So if for a person to say, you're a nigger, and really mean it, they can't.
Right.
Because if they were in a car and the car's on fire and they're pinned, they're not gonna say, come and help me. You know what I mean?
No,
So
they're not.
yeah.
No.
So that's I had a common sense about it,
Mm.
like a common life and death kind of sense
You were
about it.
able to disconnect the emotion of the word to what it really didn't mean, right? Like
Yeah, what it did to the person.
yeah. That's not
Like
a lot of people
obviously,
have that perspective.
yeah. Obviously, if you got this blindness that my
Mhm.
mom is describing, where you're calling me black and other things, and I'm calling you a cracker,
Mhm.
obviously you got that certain kind of blindness where
Yeah.
you can't be happy. Like you can't
Mm.
be happy with other colors. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. It's
And it's
interesting.
apparent. It's apparent
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
when I was growing up, you know, it wasn't just black people that were beautiful to me, and
Mhm.
it wasn't just white people. It's all people.
Was all.
Yeah. Remember, I was on the sidewalk one time, and um, there's a guy from Vietnam, and he leaned down, and on the sidewalk with me and my sister, and started doing little magic tricks. He made it look like he ate a rock, and we thought it was really, and I went to try to swallow. He said, no, 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 no. Yeah, I can do this. Just the little things,
Yeah, man.
the little things, man. My math teacher, Miss Coleman, and she wasn't even my math teacher, man. I just sucked at math. She was a
Like me,
substitute.
I did too.
Yeah, man, bad.
God
And she,
awful, bro. God
you know,
awful.
yeah, and she was one of those teachers that would sub for other teachers in the school when
Mhm.
they didn't come. And so her house was actually on the way to my house going home. And she said, "Why don't you come over and we'll work on math?" And we worked 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 and worked and worked. And I wasn't that much better in math, but I missed her. You know,
Mm.
so once in a while I come by the house and just knock and say hi. She say, hey, you want a piece of candy or something? Bam, 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 gone. You know, and uh, years and years and years and years later, I went back to knock on Miss Coleman's door
Mm.
as an adult, you know, and it wasn't in living color yet. I was working at a hospital in Bethesda, Maryland, and I was probably about 19 when I realized, wait a second, she helped me. Like I don't have to know the math.
Right.
She
Exactly.
helped
She
me.
impacted your life.
Yeah, she helped me to let me know that I care about you to learn something.
Mm.
It's the care part that you need to learn. You see?
Very good. Yeah.
Right? Because she was like, because if it wasn't, she'd be like, you got to get this. You have to, this is what you need. You know, she was never like that. You
Yeah.
know? Yeah, man.
It's all amazing, man. Like I'm entrenched in this because, a lot of people today, right? And I would imagine over the years, something happens to them. They have a trauma when they're little, something that happened that they can't control, but they let it define the rest of their future. Right. And you had, and Tommy, like straight up, dude, you could have let that childhood, of how you were found impact your mind and your soul the rest of your life. And you would not have become what you've become as a human being, first and foremost, and then as a professional. Right. So what my audience loves to hear is like, they need help, man, because we all kind of get stuck in our ruts and they love to hear perspectives of how someone has chosen to overcome those adversities. So like, give them a little peek behind how because it seems like you've always had perspective on it, but were there certain checkpoints that you went through daily to be like, all right, man, you know what, Tommy, you may have been there, you have great parents, but I'm going to get way up here and I'm going to show everybody what is possible for people that count it out.
Mm-hmm. 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 It was more like getting to that level was more like just being on a holding on to a train, making its way through, because, life in general, not that I know it, like I'm saying, here it is, guys, and let me tell you, nah, man, nah, man, you get shaped as you go. You
Yeah.
get shaped as you go. You do things that you don't even understand as you go. You get hurt by people that you didn't intend to hurt. I mean, you get hurt by people who didn't intend to hurt you, and you
Sure.
get hurt by people who intended.
Mm-hmm.
And you do the same thing.
Yeah.
Wow. Finding out who I am as I go. I can only tell you that I got to the point when I was 17 that I didn't want anybody to control where I went in life.
I like that.
And I could tell you that happened. I was at the a bus stop in like February, freezing, right? We had moved from the projects that we lived in, from the apartments that we lived in, to a house. So I wasn't hanging out in that neighborhood. That was kind of bad neighborhood. People sold drugs, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I finally got a job at a hospital, and I got that job through a friend of mine who was one of my best friends, who I wanted to be in high school with, because I got thrown out of high school because I was crazy, thrown out of junior high. There's a lot of anger problems, and the early fighting and being hurt changed me because I was like a fighter.
Yeah.
So I hung out with my friends that I met when I was 9. They were all from the city of DC, from in the city, because my neighborhood changed. And my little friends in the backyard, they didn't count anymore because you can get your butt whipped if you're by yourself, right? So I got thrown out of junior high. I wanted to be back in high school so bad with my friends. So I went to summer school and did all this stuff, and went to behavioral school and all this. And I got back and they dropped out the first week. the ones that I hung out with.
Mm.
And one of them had a job, an OJT job at a hospital. And he said, man, F this school, man. You want my job, man? I was like, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Because the reason why I like jobs because of my mom threw me out of the house when I was 14. He said I could not come back and
Mm.
did not let me come back until I had a job. And
Wow.
that's, so I was like, well, the job I have at the fast food place, this is a better one,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I got that job. The job started changing me because
Mm.
people on the job were saying, you can have a car, right? They were workers, just
Mm.
regular people that worked, not college and nothing that, you can get a used car, man. Yeah, yeah, you can get a used car. Come here. See this one? See that one? Look, how much you get? How much you get paid? A week? Blah, blah. Okay. And they tell me, if you just do that and do that, you can have that. Oh, okay. I'm serious, little Tommy. You can have it. You can't spend all your money, but you can have it. So
Mm-hmm.
it was these things that
Right.
started catapulting me ahead. You know, I ended up, dropping out of college
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't get the radio gig at the university uh, music station, and I
Yeah.
interned. I interned. I had 2 jobs at my little apartment, and they gave it to the frat boy when it came, and I cleaned up for months, in there getting the food, and so
Yeah.
I was like, I'm out of here.
I'm
And
out.
my counselor liked me for some reason, and she would call me in her office, and she'd just sit and talk to me. She thought it was pretty interesting. And when I came to her, she said, I don't think college is for you, man. You got 2 little cars, you got an apartment, you got a cat,
Yeah.
you're happy, you know. I think there's something out there for you. And so I just went with that. Eventually, 25 years later, I was in the lobby of a hotel in Miami. I'm gigging as Tommy Davidson in a comedy club, and she walked up to me crying, man. And first thing she said to me was, "You remember me?" I said, "Of course I remember you." She said, "I was so afraid because I never told any student not to go to school, and I was so afraid of what would happen to you." And her husband's with her. He said, "Yeah, she thought of you often, man." She said, "When I saw you on
Wow.
TV and doing that stuff, it just warmed my heart." You know. So
That's
so
incredible, dude.
so it's what went on with me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm no singed or less scarred than anyone. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that just reacts out of what has shaped you. I went through a lot of hard times, once I got there.
Oh, I bet.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so now what? You
Mm-hmm.
got what everybody said was good. This makes you, okay, and all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't. I had some stuff to know. I had some stuff, a journey to make. You know, I stopped doing all the things I was doing in my neighborhood and drugs and stuff like that, and I
Yeah.
never really looked back on that. And it started to permeate. You know, and it wasn't anything that I did on purpose, and it wasn't anything that I did. Uh, 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 it wasn't anything that I did consciously, but it just became to get really hard, like life. You know,
Yeah.
and that was tough. And I had my own downward spiral. I had to get into recovery and get myself together, and get back on the path. And it wasn't an easy thing to do. And
It's
I had to realize at a point that this is not something that I just do. It's a way that I must live.
yes.
But
Yes.
just because it's the way that I live, you know, and it gets me in balance, doesn't mean that I'm going to live perfectly. The best thing that came out of it was that it's okay that I'm not perfect.
Yep. Yep.
But what was haunting me was the fact that maybe I think I'm not.
Mm,
Because how can I be black and white at the same time? But that's my own personal issue.
sure.
Just like a Vietnam vet who goes out into the field at 19 years old and wanted to be there, and bam, loses a leg. You know, and then there he is.
Yeah.
Carrying.
You know what's
You know what I mean?
You know what's the one thing that I want the audience to really key in on as they're listening to your story is going back to hanging on to the train as it goes, right? Because I think we all get in those modes. I'm on my own train right now and it's going fast as hell and I'm holding on, right? And I'm becoming who I'm becoming in the middle of it, right? But I also think it's super important to understand that those are the moments, right, that you grow as a human being and a professional. And the one thing that I loved about your story, outside of all the obvious things, and hopefully the audience that's really tuned in picked up on this, you can't judge your journey of where you start and where you're going to be. Because if you say, hey, your acting career, how did that happen? How did you become, would somebody mention a hospital? No. Would somebody mention, a counselor, right? Saying, hey, college isn't for you. Probably not. So this whole journey led you indirectly to where you're at now. And so that's the beautiful part about life, man, and like, I just want them to really key in on that because people are going through shit, man. They want to be this, a certain thing. And they think that, well, if I go over here and do that, it's not going to lead me there. Brother, I played baseball in college, right? At Louisiana State University, playing the College World Series. Then I sold mortgages and then I lost everything. And then I was a teacher and a baseball coach. And then I had my first child. I have 3 now. And I'm like, I need to make more money. So I'm going to go sell payroll. So I'm talking to all these different types of people, doctors, dentists, construction workers, you name it, traffic controllers, whatever. And I'm having all amazing conversations with these people. I'm like, man, this isn't getting me anywhere. And then I went to the medical industry, right? And so I'm having all the eclectic style of talking to multiple walks of life. And then all of a sudden, one of the top shows, right? Podcasts. Well, it's because all those moments that I was judging was actually building me for this.
Right.
It's just, life is beautiful, man.
It is.
It just really is.
It really is. But, some of the facts, some of the true facts have to go along with, for me, go along with me. One of the facts is that, hey, I can't control something that I already did.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't change it.
Yeah.
I can change my behavior. I can say I'm sorry, but if it's not followed by followed by atonement, it doesn't work.
That's it right there, man.
Right? Even if the person is gone, you never see him again or whatever. The change in the behavior is the key.
Yeah, man, for sure.
Ain't nobody got one behavior that ain't going to keep following them. But the thing about it is, one of the best things that God has created, I will call it that, people don't, and that's okay.
I do.
is the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Is the moment. Give the moment a minute. And it's hard to give the moment a minute. How am I going to give a moment a minute when I think a thought every second? I'm me.
Yeah.
So putting on the brakes had to be grooved into a habit.
Mm-hmm.
Grooved into a habit. It had to be a routine and all that to to get this to be a reflex that when I start going, nah, man, this don't mean that, man. I can't. What the, man.
Mm-hmm.
All right, okay, hold on. You know, listen to the air conditioner for a second. Lean your head against the jet. Just listen to the engine for a minute. Don't listen to you for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to something that has something that you don't. Something that has continuity and will not stop. They borrowed little print. We borrowed little things from what we saw and created this air conditioner that will not stop.
Mm.
And we created this jet that can fly and with the engine will not stop. But we're not what makes everything go forever. So why don't I just take a chip of it real quick and tap into that power?
Yeah, man.
The one that
It's good to tap into that other energy and feel it, right? And get your mind off of what's going on. Because respectful of your time, before we land the plane here, since we're talking about a jet, I always start it. Okay. I love it, man. I honestly could sit here. I could sit here for 2 hours with you, man. I really could, but I want you to talk about Varnell Hill, man.
Varnell Hill was an idea that I brought to Martin.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, dude, there's no black talk show hosts on the air anymore. Like they're having all the fun, So I thought of a way we can get one on there. He said, what's that? I said, why don't we take the character, Varnell Hill, who was a late night talk show host on your series and make him a late night talk show host for real.
Yeah.
And the TV show will be about the TV show. So the talk show at the same time as being a TV show.
Oh, wow.
You see, so we have real guests, it's in the same time slot. We're having fun like everybody else. But when I leave, when I leave the chair, they walk back with me to the dressing room and see me in conversations with people who work with me and da-da-da-da-da-da. I am Varnell Hill. It is the Varnell Hill show. It's the people that work there. It's the world that we're in. It's about our world, right? In real time.
Yeah.
See? So
love it.
But it took 5 years, man. 5 years. We closed the contract. He loved the idea, and then wham! 5 years, man. And what faith can do. What faith can do. Just a little bit every day. Just a little bit. Just, you know what? They haven't said no.
Right? It ain't over yet.
No. Yeah, they haven't said no. George Lucas taught me that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. George Lucas called me, had sent somebody to my hotel room randomly during the Aspen Comedy Fest and said, and they said, George Lucas wants to have lunch with you. I'm like, nah, man, get out of here. George Lucas wants to have lunch with you. I'm like, kidding me. And he did. And we talked for like an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. And it's almost like he was sharing with me like what helped him and what helps him, and it wasn't like a strike of lightning. We were there celebrating in living color at the Aspen Comedy Fest, along with American Graffiti. So we had these big symposiums where everybody came and talked to the cast and question and answer. So we went to American Graffiti's, right? Harrison Ford, blah, 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 George, Howard, the whole cast, right? And so they come to see us, and at that particular time, for some reason, Keenan kept saying, Tommy can answer that. Tommy can answer that. You know what I mean? So I answered all the stuff, and he said, I was listening to you and impressed, So after that, the friend of mine is a friend of his, and he said, want to open he turned to her and went, if you're going to do that production company, I think that he would be good for you guys to join forces. And that never
Wild.
happened. You
Yeah.
see? So, but that happened. And what he told me was, and it stuck. He said, Tommy, no one's ever to this day said yes to any of my projects. Jaws, freaking, not Jaws, that's Spielberg. Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
I said Jaws because him and Spielberg did Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I meant to say, Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones. They were like, you're crazy. It's a swashbuckling architect, man. You know, and we just kept going and kept going and kept going. See, the way that I got where I am is they didn't want to do Star Wars. But I called, I think he's called Scorsese, one of them, that had supported him in film school. I think it was the Godfather dude. And he had a deal, 20th century, and they owed him that because he had a contract and all this. And he just simply called him and said, can you call them and have them honor my contract? And they said, yeah. And they said, here you go. You can have your movie, whatever, here. And he said, I want 100% trademark. And they were like, sure. So he said, if ever you have an idea and they, you know, are messing around with you, when you get to that final, you know, negotiation, ask for 100% of your trademark. You know, they don't really care about that if they don't think anything is going to make any money. They might say, well, you know, you get 50%. He said, that's a lot, man. That's a lot to have your creativity out into the world. You're going to touch more people than you're going to touch money, you know?
Yep. That's it. It's interesting, man. It's interesting. We don't know when something's going to hit, right? We just don't know. And it's so funny. It's like, you know, they haven't said no yet. Right. And I think that it's a good lesson because, you know, you sat there, like you said, for 5 years and then just overnight, I mean, for the outside looking in, obviously, right. Overnight, it was like an explosion. I think it was like a week and a half ago or something like that, where the internet just blew up about your show. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. I was like, I'm jacked about this one. And then Val and I talked about it. I'm like, dude, like this guy, I'm telling you, man. And she's, you know, obviously loves you. And you know, so it's just one of those things, man. I think it's a testament for people that are listening that, hey, it may suck. It may feel like you're walking through hell and your clothing drenched in gasoline, but you know what? Hey, walk through it anyway. It's going to be hot, but one day something's going to happen, right? If you stay faithful, you have a sliver of faith in God, in anything, and even in yourself. Like, yo, come on, what are we doing here?
You know, kindness helps.
You
know, it's your disposition. You know, you're apt to, you know, you have to lean towards, you know, the side that the gravity is heavier.
Yep.
You know, I hate this, I hate that, and hate that, and hate this, and that. These son of a, you know.
Yeah.
You know, this is not going to happen because I don't think that, whatever, you know, instead of, you know what, you know, I didn't put that daggone sun up there. You know, I didn't make an orange, but it's sure I can just pick one.
Anytime.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You know, the amazing thing about my children when they were born, and it was my observation, man, was that they loved everything here right away. They loved everything right here right away. Water.
Yep.
You know, a piece of bread. You know, I remember I gave my son a piece of cotton candy and he was little, and I just gave him a piece like that. And he just went.
His eyes got huge.
They like what's already here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to say it must have been put here for them, you know.
Mm.
And so does a monkey, and so does a fish. I mean, they're just like having their way, man. You know, those little turtles are just going to the beach. They're just like, well, that part's over.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Let's go to the next thing.
Yeah,
The gift of being present. That's why it's a gift, right? That's why
yeah,
it's
yeah,
called the
yeah,
present.
yeah.
Presence, man. Like to
Yeah,
be present is a
yeah.
massive gift, right? Because every moment is so precious if you allow it to be, right? So, dude, thank you so much for
Man,
coming
you
on,
got
man.
it.
I'm so excited to watch more of your work, and I know it's going to be awesome. And
These are the important things. These are
yes,
the important things when we traveled far as clans and we were, and we got a little bit colder than where we were from or whatever, it was us running into the next clan, man, that was living there already, man, you know,
yeah,
and they just said, man, you guys, what's going on? You don't have one of these, you need one of these or, water, or whatever.
yep,
And it's this. We think it's something else. We
no, it's
think,
this.
yeah, for some reason, we think you can buy your way there. But trade changed. You could trade lumber,
Mm-hmm.
someone who has meat, because
Mm-hmm.
you can use it to build and keep your family warm and you can eat that. Somebody one day said, no, trade is this rock.
Mm-hmm.
Trade is this
Mm-hmm.
rock. So if I get the rock, if I got this rock, you give me this rock, you can give me 5 of those big old logs and you can give me 3 of those cows. And they're going, get out of here. They're going, no, take the rock.
Yeah, and give me that. Then currency began. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
my
that's
man.
as a kid, I started looking at things like that because I was like,
Mhm.
how does this happen? How does this happen? And all just that made sense to me.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
the human race racing for resources, racing for power, racing for this, and we have abandoned being mankind.
Well, that's
So,
big
like,
right now, Tommy.
yeah. So the jet parallel that I drew is just as real as hell
Yeah.
because in the pandemic, nobody was hating nobody.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody did what they had to do together. It's when I was watching a movie with Keanu Reeves that I just love, man. And the aliens come and they take over Earth, and they take us, they take all the animals off while they slaughter us,
Yeah.
right? And there's this professor that says, man, just don't do it to us, man. We know now. We know, okay. That's the only time we change is that when we are at the precipice of our survival.
Hmm. That's
And
impactful, man.
you know what I mean?
Mic drop. It's a mic drop, Tommy.
Hey, man.
My man. My man. I appreciate you,
Thank you,
dude.
man.
Hey, no, I can't wait for it to come out. I know there's not a date yet, but I got your cell number, so I'm gonna be texting you. I'm like, bro, give me some inside info, dog.
Hey,
Like,
man.
I need to know this.
Hey, you got a great podcast. So, this is these are the ones that count.
Yeah. Yeah,
We can
man.
this could be about, hey, this person did that. Now, what do you think of that? This person just, their marriage, you know, I heard he was cheating anyway,
Mm-hmm. No,
and
this
then
show's not that, man.
let that,
This show's
and
not that, bro.
that'll be the thing. You know what I
Yep.
mean? That'll be the thing, instead of, what? Sometimes relationships don't work out. We don't know what was really going on with that person. Da, 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 da. It makes everybody want to be like,
Crack
what I
me up,
mean?
dog. Yeah, I do. I get you,
So,
man. I get you. But I'm gonna land the plane here, big guy, and I just appreciate you so much, and I can't wait for just a lot more of Tommy, right? And to the audience, I really hope you do 3 things. One, first and foremost, share the show with somebody you know, love, and trust that his story would resonate with them, and then go check out his book, Living in Color. And then ultimately, when that show pops, Varnell Hill, I need y'all to go watch it, because if you haven't been exposed to Tommy's work, you need to go back and binge all the cool stuff he did and then watch how he hasn't missed a beat. And so, y'all, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, stay determined.
Sean French, what up? This one luck, I let the pain inspire me. I put my all in everything I'm doing. Up until it's done, I'm me for the entirety. I put in overtime, I be working. Just know I'ma go for mine, cause I earned it. They watching, I know it's time, I confirmed it. A whole society determined.